Hokie Hangover live on YouTube, youtube.com/at Hokie Hangover podcast. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. We are recording on the evening of Wednesday, November 27th, night before Thanksgiving, to talk Virginia Tech, Virginia season finale on Saturday at Lane Stadium. Hokies looking to clinch a bowl game against the Virginia Cavaliers, sixth time in the last 10 years that's been the case where Virginia Tech has needed to win the season finale to make a bowl game. Uh, Guys, we've talked about this extensively, but I don't think any of us thought Virginia Tech would be sitting at 5-6 heading into the season finale. I saw that Virginia Tech is favored in this game for the 10th time this season. They've been favored in a football game. That's 10 times in 12 games. And Virginia Tech is 5-6 entering Saturday. So that's where we're at. Pretty much a synopsis of the season.
And pretty much and I don't remember if we ever actually said this or if it didn't even need to be said, but effectively a worst possible case scenario, given the preseason expectations. Perhaps a scenario that some wouldn't even have deemed possible at that time. So here we go again.
Yeah, we're at the point of the year where we all get really hyped about potentially beating Virginia, and then reality is going to come just slamming us in the face probably after this game about the program, regardless if Virginia Tech wins or loses. I might add, the outcome of this game does not in any way change my opinion on the season. I guess the only way that could happen is if UVA were to win this game by 2 scores. If Virginia Tech wins this game, if Virginia Tech loses this game narrowly, this year is still a failure by any objective metric. And that's just where we're at. So, do I want to win this game? Absolutely. Is winning this game important? You bet. But if we're talking about the grand scheme of things, not all that relevant.
Yeah, like do things get drastically better if Virginia Tech beats UVA on Saturday? No, but do they get worse if Virginia Tech loses this game? Yeah, like it's almost like we're going to be running in place, or it's going to get way worse. Those are kind of the options I think coming out of this Saturday's contest. Virginia Tech has won 18 of the last 19. They've won 4 straight against UVA. The Hokies have dominated this series, and I meant to say 3 straight. They've won 3 straight against UVA, 18 out of the last 19. But they've dominated this series for the better part of the last 2 decades. Even some of Virginia Tech's worst teams have been able to win this finale against Virginia. So this is an important game from that standpoint. Just, I think even more so given Virginia's struggles in the second half of the year. They haven't really done anything well over the last 5 or 6 weeks. It's been a really, really tough go of it for UVA. For as bad as things have gotten in Blacksburg and the way that Virginia Tech has kind of been up and down and very mediocre all year long, feels like Virginia got through the first handful of games on their schedule feeling pretty good, and then they haven't really done too much well since then. So this is a game I feel like you have
That's
to
a
win.
nice way to put it, Mike.
Yeah, you almost have to win it just from the standpoint of the way Virginia's playing, and that's like taking all the other context out of it. We'll get into this game here in a few minutes. The one thing I wanted to hit on tonight, there was a recent Board of Visitors meeting that obviously Tim Sands was a part of. A big part of that Board of Visitors meeting was the impending House versus NCAA settlement, which is, for those of you who don't know, that's essentially the settlement that took place in Congress that basically led to this revenue sharing, pay for play era of college athletics that's upon us. That's really going to come into effect beginning early next year, like April-ish timeframe of 25. You're already starting to see reports of underclassmen kind of signing preliminary not at Virginia Tech, just across college football, like underclassmen starting to sign preliminary like pay for play offers, like agreements almost with schools moving forward. Uh, Tim Sands had some interesting comments and regarding Virginia Tech's place in college athletics, where he kind of believes Virginia Tech sits in the upper echelon of schools, the impact that Virginia Tech athletics has on the New River Valley and the greater Blacksburg area, and kind of what Virginia Tech plans to do to account for this pay for play era of college athletics, this revenue sharing era that's upon us. So I wanted to read this courtesy of Doug Bowman at 24/7 VT Scoop. I just wanted to read a portion of this to all of you because I think the comments that Tim Sands made here are pretty telling in terms of how he views Virginia Tech football. And I know there have been some questions in the fan base about how seriously Tim Sands takes athletics, right, and takes college football. That's been a question, I think, among the fan base for a while. He's at the very least saying the right stuff here. And I just want to read his comments and then get y'all's reaction to it. I won't read the entire thing, but there's an important part in here that I think we should definitely hit on. So let me hit this here. So let's start here. Athletics at Virginia Tech has become a powerful force in providing a shared common experience for our students and alumni and raising Virginia Tech's profile outside of Southwest Virginia, its foundational role in the economy of the New River Valley. As you all know, the pending settlement of 3 major antitrust cases against the NCAA and Power 5 conferences, known as the House Settlement, will be up for final approval in April of 2025. Over the last decade, Whit Babcock, and I have talked about being prepared for a future fork in the road. Well, this is it. Under House, Division I institutions will be able to distribute slightly more than $20 million in annual revenue sharing in the form of institutional NIL deals for student athletes. A year ago, no institution had this expense in their FY26 budgets. There are very few programs that will not have to scramble to be competitive in the post-House world. It goes on to say that this is not going to be easy or painless, but I think that there is too much riding on the outcome, including the economic well-being of the region and the national profile of Virginia Tech, to not make every effort to compete at the highest level. So how is he going to do this? Well, he mentions that the athletics represents about 5% of the total university budget, and that's likely going to move closer to 6%. And while that doesn't seem like a small shift, that is pretty significant in the university budget. They're going to be putting a lot of money towards athletics and towards this era. Guys, I just want to get your take on this. There have been questions, right, about how seriously Tim Sands takes athletics, right? And I think a lot of that has come up because of the perceived state of Whit Babcock's job and how things are looking for him as this Brent Pry era so far has not worked out, and the basketball programs are what they are. The men's team lost again tonight to South Carolina. They've lost 4 straight non-conference games for the first time in like 70 years. It's not, men's basketball not in a very good spot. Women's basketball slightly better, but they robbed Peter to pay Paul to pay for this expensive football roster that did not produce this year. We've talked about at length. It's kind of a mess. I mean, what's your take on this as far as Sands' remarks? And I guess it's all about action, but at least it sounds like to me he's saying the right stuff.
For me, it's a wait and see. I'm one of those people, Mike, that has had questions about Tim Sands and the university administration's commitment to having a athletics program, specifically football, that can be taken seriously. And while I agree with you that he is saying a lot of the right things here, that it's important for the university as a whole that Virginia Tech remain competitive on this front, it's going to come down to whether or not they actually get it done in the budget and whether or not we start to see those resources being funneled into the athletic department the way that they need to be. And I don't think anyone is expecting Virginia Tech to be resourced to the level that, your Ohio States and Georgias and Alabama's and Texas and those universities are. but Virginia Tech can still be resourced to a level that they can be competitive at. And the resources have been a problem for a while at this school. That's well known and well documented. We've talked about it a lot on this show, but it's going to come down to whether or not Sands actually does it. And then the other part of this too, Mike, is that while Tim Sands may be willing to shift some university resources to the athletic department, is he willing to make the necessary leadership changes in order to get this department moving in the right direction? And that's a question that I really don't know the answer to. Um, I can certainly appreciate the value of stability within your leadership staff. With Babcock has been there now 10 years. Um, him and Sands probably have a very good professional relationship and work really well together, or else he wouldn't have lasted this long. But at a certain point, as the university president, you're going to have to make some decisions that um, may not be easy, but may be best for the future of your university. And I think we are coming up on one of those decisions now, guys. I don't know if it's going to get made, but at a certain point, you have to start putting people in positions that are getting results. And while I do think that Witt's institutional understanding of the athletic department can be valuable as they navigate this budgetary issue, at a certain point, results matter. And Virginia Tech's not getting the results that they need right now.
Yeah, I mean, to echo what you're saying, Ricky, like, Sam said all the right things in the statement. And I wouldn't blame you at all whatsoever for anything that you said about Sam's commitment to athletics in the past or any questions that you have going forward. Now, the House settlement, as Sands states in the letter, is a big chunk of money that Virginia Tech nor any other school in the entire country anticipated having to put in their budget.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think they'll make some things work. But here's what I'll tell you: athletic directors don't tend to get fired in November, December. And football coaches don't tend to get fired in May. Athletic directors also don't get the chance to hire a third football coach, really a second. And that especially wouldn't happen when the institution took on a $26 million unexpected expense. I'm not saying anything's going to happen. But for those of you who are out here rooting for this to happen, which it is a matter of dominoes, when one falls, so too will the others. Or at least one domino can't fall without the other. I think the biggest story of the House situation is wait and see. Because if we're talking about Babcock, right, we know right now today, to Mike's point, he robbed Peter to pay Paul. And what'd you get? 6-6 at best. A big disappointment. What Brent Pry's predecessor got fired for doing, effectively. Justin Fuente had one losing season, and it was in COVID, albeit with a really good roster, but also with a full ACC schedule, other than the Liberty game. But just the questions of all of it, right? Like, I don't think anyone wants to be judged solely on what they accomplished in a COVID season. And you can take that to the professional baseball level when all of the legacy Dodgers, first things that they said in their post-game interviews was, we got a real one, we got a real one. Right? Like, either way, that's what Fuente got fired for. So We're still there. Effectively 10 years into a time machine from people trying to push Frank Beamer into retirement. And things have, for the most part, stayed entirely stagnant. What did Witt always have to fall back on? The men's basketball program. Someone tweeted at me earlier today, following the loss. Radio host Austin Orman out in Lincoln, Nebraska. I've done a lot of hits on the show. I have a lot of love for these guys. So they were just letting me know. Virginia Tech now last in the Ken Palm. Yes, it's Thanksgiving Eve. That doesn't bode well.
No.
And on the women's side, a lot of great success there. But above all, it doesn't matter. You can skate by when everything else is doing so excellently that you trust this guy's judgment. But as he advances in age, and as the money-making problem, the only money-making issue, which remains a problem, continues to be a problem, I think the writing ultimately is going to be on the wall. With all that being said, perhaps this house settlement situation kicks the can down the road. But I don't think it can be for too long, because at the end of the day, time is not on his side. With where things are, as we look ahead to a 2025 season where I think 7 wins might feel good again for Virginia Tech football. Not good, but just given what's on the roster, what's your expectation going to be? And basketball seems so far away. So far away. It just seems hard to imagine in 2027 that Whit Babcock will still be here. And to put an exclamation point on that, right? Think about all the success that UVA has had across all sports. Far greater, take away the football side, than Virginia Tech. And I take no pleasure in saying that. I'm just being honest. And if you ask some of their alumni, they'd tell you that Carla Williams is on the hot seat. And she has a basketball national championship under her belt and tons of success in baseball, lacrosse, pretty much anything else that you think might matter. But it's not enough, because that doesn't pay the bills. And I think that's where Whit Babcock is. So if the house settlement is anything that you can fear, it's fear of the can being kicked down the road a little bit further, which if you're listening to this and there's a bad taste in your mouth, I understand why.
I think I've seen some tweets about this and stuff like that. There's a notion that the fan base, and this kind of ties into the point you just made, Andrew, about the can getting kicked down the road, so I want to bring this up now. There's a notion that the fan base is more impatient with Pry than they were with Fuente. And I think that's for a couple reasons. Number one, Pry had some early success Fuente had some early success that Pry is not and has not had, right? I mean, at least Fuente had the 19 wins in 2 years, right? The counterpoint to that is Pry didn't inherit the roster, right, that Fuente had. But I think the fans just collectively understand that COVID kind of kicked the can down the road with Fuente a little bit, right? Like, it was not trending in a good direction. Like, basically from when he took that Baylor interview and ended up turning down that job, from that point on, things were not looking very good. And then the COVID year happened, and Tech had the losing season. And I think a lot of people were maybe not expecting, but at least thinking that Virginia Tech might move on. And you all will remember, I mean, the news kind of broke in the middle of the afternoon that Virginia Tech was keeping Fuente for the 21 season. And it was a bit of a surprise, right? Given how the 2020 season went. Not a shock because of how athletic department finances were at the time, not just at Virginia Tech, but kind of across college athletics. It wasn't a shock, but it was a little bit of a surprise that Virginia Tech was holding on to Fuente an extra year. So that kind of kicked the Fuente can down the road, right? COVID, which nobody could have expected, kind of buys him an extra year. And now I think because of that, and because we saw it not work out, I think the fan base, looks at this and they saw 22 and how bad it was and gave Pry a pass, right? Inheriting a bad roster, all that stuff. We got to give him time, right? Last year, the beginning of the year got off to such a bad start. It was like, oh man, is he ever going to figure it out? And in the second half of the year, Tech wasn't beating good teams, but they were starting to show some progress, like show some improvement. The back half of the year, given where Virginia Tech's roster was last year and the youth on it, right? And I'm thinking like drones at quarterback and like starting to figure it out and put the pieces together. Saw some momentum, right? Win the bowl game, hamstrung Tulane team, didn't have their coach, didn't have their starting quarterback, all that stuff. But you win the bowl game, gives you some momentum going into this year where you retain everybody like a week after the bowl game, which we've talked about. But then the first time you have expectations was really this year, right? First time you have expectations. And they've fallen so short of them this year that I understand why the fan base is like, man, this is not working, right? Because we got burned by the last guy, right? Like, didn't really have expectations in 2016. Fuente takes Tech to a conference title game. 2017 had some expectations, got to a good bowl game, but lost to a good Oklahoma State team, right? Like, okay, 19 wins, 2 years. Fuente got a contract extension, was being pursued by Florida State, right?
He got
Post
2 in
Jimbo.
2 years.
He had 2 in 2 years. So, that felt pretty good. But then really the next time Virginia Tech actually had expectations was 2018, right? Because Jackson was coming into his second year as a starting quarterback, and you had a lot of talent coming back, and you fell so flat. And then things kind of progressed from there. I just think this fan base is tired of being burned, right? Like feeling like they got a good team on paper, feeling like the schedule is kind of gettable. And I think Virginia Tech being favored in 10 out of the 12 regular season games this year is a testament to the schedule being gettable, right? Vegas views it that way. And again, Virginia Tech fans are looking at this feeling like, all right, well, we had a good team on paper. Vegas thought we had a pretty decent team. Like, over-under win total was 7.5 in the regular season, right? Thinking that I think it was slightly plus odds, for Virginia Tech to go over. But it was relatively even spread, even money on the 7.5, thinking they could be a 7 or 8 win team. And that doesn't sound very good. But I think relative to what Virginia Tech's been, a lot of people would have taken 8-4 this year. And a lot of people were predicting anywhere between 8 and 10 wins. That's what everybody was thinking. And they're falling so short of that. It's like, look, Pry's not going to get fired, and the house settlement stuff, I think, does kick the can down the road because athletic departments, have to come up with this money and don't want to fire head coaches unless they absolutely have to. That's why the North Carolina firing of Mac Brown was so interesting. Like, these athletic departments don't want to have to fire coaches and pay buyouts unless they absolutely have to. Pry's got a pretty big buyout. Tech's not going to fire him. We could see some staff changes, obviously, but I don't know. And Babcock, it's like sit and wait because he's not going to fire Pry because that means he's kind of firing himself.
Yep.
So he's going to sit and wait and hope it works out. And he needs football to work out because if football works out, guys, I know we got a lot of Virginia Tech basketball fans that listen to this podcast. Like, we all like the basketball team, want to do well, both men's and women's. But, like, if football does well, I don't want to say it's to hell with basketball. Rising tide raises all ships. But like, if the football team's doing well and you sold out for the
That's all that
football team,
matters.
that's all that matters, man. It pays the bills, like Andrew was saying.
We talked about this over the summer when we were justifying effectively what is the reason that Virginia Tech basketball is currently in the position that they're in. And we said the best chance that Virginia Tech has to remain relevant at basketball in this NIL era, which, by the way, is clearly so much more disruptive to basketball than it is to football. When I watch, as a guy who grew up a Duke fan, but I watch Duke freshmen with Nike deals versus Kansas freshmen with Adidas deals. And then the rest of the team is filled in by, guy on Wisconsin who was second team All Big Ten last year as their fifth role player, right? Like, that's disruptive. And we don't need to rehash exactly what happened to Virginia Tech because it's a long story. We don't have time. But the best chance Virginia Tech has to be competitive in men's basketball is to be good at football, bring in a bunch more revenue. But, like, to your point, history doesn't repeat itself, but goddamn, sometimes it does rhyme. 2018 for Justin Fuente. Missed expectations. Blame it on a young team, blame it on the roster. There were also some injuries there. We give the guy a pass. Though some people were calling for his job after a 6-6 season. Don't forget that, right? 6-6, not a majority of people, but some people in 2018, following 19 wins in 2 years, were out on Fuente. 2022 with Brent Pry, a lot of games you're scratching your head. You give him the pass, it's year one. Cupboard was left bare. 2019, first 4 games of the season, Virginia Tech loses to Boston College. Demolished by Duke at home. After 4 games, a lot of people are saying, okay, now we're putting the sirens on. This thing might not be working out. You look back to last year, first 4 games, Rutgers, Marshall. Again, 4 games into that thing, you can go back into the historical records and listen to this podcast. The first time we started saying, this thing might not be working out. In both 19 and 23, a resurgence of sorts. 2023, the march to Annapolis, but the wins look so good. 2019, far better than that. You're winning games in 6 overtimes at home against North Carolina, and you're beating Miami on the road, and you come within 1 game, really 1 drive, of the ACC championship game. And then in that offseason, it's, oh my God, Justin Fuente, who we were literally calling for his job 2.5 months ago, he would leave us to go to Baylor? And on the other side, Brent Pry coronated. People naming their children after him. Small statues being built all throughout the state of Virginia. 2020, 2024. High standards, high expectations, extremely disappointing results. And the biggest similarity between the two, the feeling that the roster was there, but the coaching was not. And that we coached our way out of winnable games. So what's the final similarity? And Mike highlighted this before. Off-season 2020. COVID. Low revenue for athletic departments. Totally unexpected. No one wants to fire their coach right now. 2024. This big $26 million bill that everyone's got to pay that no one expected to. So, how does the story finish? For Justin Fuente, you know the story. For Brent Pry, you hope it gets better. You hope it follows more of the pattern of Clark Lee, or at least how that looks right now today. You shake up the coordinators, you live to fight another day. But for everyone in this fan base who says, like, we've seen this movie before, I understand why you feel that way. Because 2021, in a lot of ways, feels like a wasted season. And that you kick the can down the road just a little bit too far. And what did it cost you? It just costed you, again, a season. You felt one season further from being where you want to be. And off air, I gave Mike a little bit of crap because Mike's not coming to the UVA game. He's not a psycho. I said another season goes by where Mike McDaniel hasn't been to a game with me. I think the last season was 2019. He says, I haven't missed much, have I? It hits home, but it's true.
Well, at least we had to preview this UVA game.
So
Let's
how's
do it.
UVA's O line looking this year?
So I was just doing some math. In the last 4 games, UVA has dropped 3 out of their last 4. In the last 4 games, they have given up 27 sacks. Is that good?
Nothing is good about UVA right now, Michael.
Yeah. So they're
You could
coming
have
off
just
of
finished
a.
the sentence that nothing is good.
Yeah.
So look. They beat Pittsburgh. That was a pretty good win, right?
We thought.
They lost. They lost to North. Yeah, they. There's a good chance Pitt loses their final 5 games of the year. That culminates this Saturday. So, just doing some math here in my notebook. Excuse me.
Are you writing down
Carolina.
notes? Someone else
North-
writes down notes on the sideline.
North Carolina. Yeah, he should be writing notes down like this. That's what you should be doing. You know, you should be doing. Should be like checking off boxes after you like miss field goals and have procedural penalties and stuff, or just maybe you just like do the clock stuff on the notebook. Add a little section you can like bubble it
Write
off.
down all the players' numbers. And if
Maybe-
you write the same number twice,
Yeah, dude,
you've
just
gone
put
too far.
yeah. Just like check like you see like everybody running onto the field for special teams. Just like do a check. Just like okay, number 9, check number 9. Oh my god. Okay, we got 2 of them. Timeout.
I mean, give him credit. It hasn't happened yet.
It
Since
hasn't
it happened
happened.
twice.
Hasn't happened yet since it happened twice. That's right. UVA. So
3
UVA
strikes
gave
rule.
up. UVA, don't tell Stu Holt. UVA gave up 10 sacks to North Carolina. They gave up 6 to Pittsburgh. They only gave up 2 to Notre Dame, but they were totally non-competitive in that football game. Notre Dame didn't really need to get after the quarterback there. And they gave up 9 last Saturday to SMU. So APR. This is an APR game.
Yeah.
It's an APR
Where you at,
game.
bud?
It's an APR
Especially
game.
since he was left off these award final lists. I feel like this is a good time for him to
Remind everybody.
remind everybody that he's like second or whatever in the country in sacks.
He played really well last week. He was getting held a bunch. They just weren't throwing the flag. He played well, I thought, last Saturday against Duke. Bummer.
Yeah, UVA is pretty bad. I was just going through some standard team statistics, and I'm going to go ahead and read these off really quick. On the offensive side, guys, 92nd rush offense, 59th passing offense, 103rd in scoring offense, 120th in third down conversions. Guys, their red zone touchdown percentage is 132nd in the country. That is 2 from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively better, but still not much to write home about. 58th against the run, 126th against the pass, which is horrendous. 89th scoring defense, 60th on getting teams off the field on third down. 53rd in red zone touchdown percentage for opponents. this is a team that doesn't really do anything well, guys. They don't they don't rush the passer particularly well. They don't defend the pass. They don't really defend the run all that well. Anthony Calandra is not creating much on the offensive end. He's turning the ball over a ton. They don't run the football particularly well. Malachi Fields is really the only guy on offense that they have that really gives anyone reason to pause. So, uh, for all of the issues that Virginia Tech has, there is a reason why the Hokies are 7-point favorites right now in this game. I would expect the line to stay somewhere around 7, given that UVA is as bad as they've been and they're playing really, really bad football of late.
Yeah, I think so. Tony Elliott mentioned that he would not be publicly announcing a quarterback change in the wake of the loss to SMU, but that he would consider all options coming into this week, just with how bad it's been with Calandria.
To be fair, none of all options are great.
Yeah, Tony
I
Muskett's
mean,
not really playing that well either.
yeah, he was a mixed bag when he was healthy last year. I don't know that switching between Calandria or Musket really changes things all that much from UVA's standpoint. Like, Musket probably takes care of the ball a little bit better. Calandria probably gives you a little bit more upside in terms of pop in the passing game, less game managery, and more sling it and
He's
take
got
the good with the
more
bad.
he's got more Diego Pavi in him than I care to admit.
Yeah, I
Well, I mean, to that point though, we just saw Duke's quarterback throw 2 bombs within 5 minutes of the game to essentially give Duke the win. Right? Virginia Tech holds past that.
mm-hmm.
So a little bit of pop in the passing game seems to be Virginia Tech's weakness. On top of that, it's going to be really cold. So
Yes.
mobility is going to be at a premium, which we'll
Yeah.
get to when we talk about Virginia Tech's quarterback. But I would expect to see Calandria.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, let's just get to the Virginia Tech side of it now, because I feel like this is one of those games where it really is all about Virginia Tech. You know,
Which we've been
just
saying a lot this year.
we've been saying a lot, right? And in this particular matchup, especially, looks like it's going to be Pop Watson. I mean, it didn't sound great in the presser. I mean, the Pry is like, yeah, I mean, Drones and Schlee are questionable. Schlee probably a little further along than Drones. I'm like, all right, well, that's probably not a good sign considering Schlee is the newest guy to get hurt, right?
Yep.
I would expect to see Pop Watson. So,
Yeah, and yeah, I'm really interested to see how if the offense is really any different in terms of its kind of stated goal on each drive, given that you have really a completely different quarterback. I mean, I know that Kyron and Schlee are very mobile guys, but Watson really doesn't fit the mold of either of them. He's not as experienced of a passer. He's probably very raw. Given what we saw against Duke, I think that that's a fairly accurate assessment. He's not a physical runner like Kyron. He's going to be definitely more of a shifty runner, something like, but a lot shiftier than Schlee, right? I don't think Schlee is the kind of guy that's going to be deking people left and right. So this is a different style of quarterback for Virginia Tech, and Bowen has an entire week to prepare for that. How does this offense change? Not just considering that, but considering the weather in this game, and the fact that it's going to be absolutely frigid. Does Bowen have some tricks up his sleeve for this game? You can almost bet we're going to see at least one reverse, right? I think that's you can go ahead and book that now. If you can get a prop bet on that, you should go ahead and get it. But in all seriousness, I do think Watson will play better in this game than he has or than he did last week. Not just because of UVA being a much worse defense, but he's going to have a full week as the first team QB in practice. I would expect less issues with the pass pro, the stuff that we talked about on the recap. And I would expect an offense that's going to be a bit more tailored for him in a package of plays that he's obviously going to be fairly comfortable with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, Pry said this week that a lot of the sacks were due to poor protection in terms of calling the right protection at the line of scrimmage, which you would expect, right? With
Yeah, I mean, guys
a
were
third
coming
string quarterback.
unblocked off the line like every other
Yeah.
play, and usually when guys are coming unblocked, that's usually a quarterback issue because they're not getting the protection right. It could be a lineman missing an assignment, and that certainly happens quite a bit. But a lot of times when you see 6 guys on the line of scrimmage and the quarterback doesn't get those things lined up properly, you're going to get those unblocked rushers.
Yeah. I didn't think Virginia Tech's tackles played particularly well against
No,
Duke, and I thought that had less to do with the protections being called incorrectly and more to do with they just didn't play well. But like when we saw guys just running in untouched, like up the A gap, it was like, all right, like this is a problem, right? We
something's not
have
right.
we have guys coming right like through the middle of the interior offensive line, like untouched, and that felt more protection based. So I wasn't very surprised to hear Price say that. And Ricky, I know you and I talked about on the recap. It was like how much of this is the offensive line doing what the offensive line has done at points this year, where they just haven't played particularly well, versus
Yeah,
yeah, there was some of that, but there was also a lot of like, hey, this is a third string redshirt freshman quarterback that is not running with the ones very often and is green from an experience standpoint as far as in-game experience is concerned. I think that some of that will be cleaned up. I agree with you. Like full week running with the ones, I think that'll help. You also have the benefit of game film and like learning what you've screwed up, right?
yeah.
In the Duke game, and like having that experience under your belt, I think you'll be a little bit more comfortable this week. Also, UVA's defense just isn't as good, so I mean, I think that's just something that will help as well. I don't think you'll be seeing as good of a pass rush, regardless of whether or not you call the right or wrong protections. Like, I just think Duke's got a much better defense than UVA, so I think that's kind of helpful as well. You get to lower the difficulty a bit in theory, on paper anyway. But yeah, I wasn't surprised to hear Price say that. So hopefully they're able to clean that particular piece of it up a little bit.
And just one quick note on Pop. I feel like this game is extremely important for his future. If Saturday goes okay or goes well, I could see that having an impact on his decision as to whether or not he's a Hokie next year.
Or how other teams view him in the portal.
Yeah,
But
Very true. Yeah.
no, but for me, guys, come on, it comes down to the play in the trenches, and it comes down to a final lane stadium act. For one Basial two, it's going to be 25 degrees at the high at the start of the game.
yeah.
Come on,
Run the football, run the rock.
run the damn ball. I got a
Yeah.
hat. Shout out SWVA shop. I can't wear it. It's going to be 25 degrees. But if they made it into a knit hat, if you guys can overnight ship that on Thanksgiving night to me, I'll wear it. Because that's what it comes down to, guys. It comes down to Virginia Tech not beating themselves. And you can talk about Pop Watson all you want. Duke tried to beat themselves in that game. And Virginia Tech was unable to take it. Because despite the interceptions, despite the fumble at the end, if you get beat over over the top like that twice, spot the other team 14 points. Like, how many times do we have to have this conversation in one season? Like,
Had a lot last year too.
a lot last year too.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to come back from that. It's going to be harder for anyone to do that in the cold. So that almost plays to Virginia Tech's advantage. Whether you're rolling out Pop Watson, whether you're rolling out Schlee or Drones. In fact, we talk about Schlee as being potential concussion. Well, if he can play and Drones is like capable but immobile, give me Schlee. If he can run, if he's willing to go out there. Because I don't think at least like the deep passing game to an extent should be neutralized. Now there's going to be big play potential. young players, distracted, it's cold. But I feel like this game is played in the trenches, and Virginia Tech, as shaky as they've been, seem to have an outright advantage in that department and an outright advantage at running back if Tootin can play.
Yeah. Tootin looked healthy last week. I don't know how much of that we hit on in the recap, Ricky. I can't remember. I thought Tootin looked relatively healthy last week. I thought the off week helped him quite a bit. I thought he looked okay.
Definitely. And if he's anywhere close to 100%, that's a godsend for this offense. They desperately need him on the field, capable of toting the rock, 15 plus carries. The offense just is not the same without him out there.
And that's in normal circumstances. I mean, add in the fact you're potentially starting Watson, and it's entirely different.
Yeah,
like level of importance. I feel like, yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, cold weather, feed your all conference running back. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Give him the ball, and I don't want to say hope for the best, but like Andrew, you mentioned the thing about. I just want to hit on this real quick before we get into ACC picks. That if Drones isn't healthy, right? If the mobility piece, especially like you mentioned, if that's not there, which I have no reason to think it's there, with his knee being the thing that's hurt, right? And it's sounding like he's not even really practicing. Whether it's Schlee or Pop, I watched Georgia Tech, right? And Haynes King can't lift his arm up higher than this. So, like, they're rotating quarterbacks and they're trying to use Haynes King and his running ability, right? Because he's got, like, a pretty good grasp of what they want to do in the running game with Jamal Haynes and their read option stuff. But it's not really that effective because they know he can't throw, right? Like, he's physically unable to throw because his shoulder's so hurt. If Drones is not a running threat, that takes away, it's kind of the flip side, right? It takes away a lot of what you're good at. It's the same conversation we're having with Haynes King.
No, it takes all of what you're good at away, Mike.
Yeah.
Like, don't be generous. I mean, Kyron has not offered much at all through the air this year.
Right,
and
but I'm just saying in general,
if you
that's
make
the
him
only
a statue, it's only going to get even worse.
Well, that's my point too. Like everything he does in the passing game is built off of his ability to run.
Yeah.
Like he's better outside the pocket. He's better when that part of the running game is working, right? He has that threat. I mean, how many times have they run that play, right, where Drones like takes the snap, pretends like he's going to run a quarterback draw, and then hits a pop pass over the middle for like 20, 25 yards? I mean, how many times does Virginia Tech run that play? I mean, if that threat's not there and you're a mediocre passer anyway, like it's the same conversation we're having with Haynes King. Like, King's a better runner than passer, right? And now he can't throw, so you don't respect that at all. It's easier to bottle up the run. It's kind of the same conversation. So I think, given Drones' health, I mean, run Schlee out there probably gives you more in the passing game if you run Schlee, right? But if not, I mean, I'm good with playing Pop. That's fine. Fine with me. Without Drones being healthy, man, I don't see any reason why we run him out there 50%. It did not work against Clemson, so I'm good. I've seen enough there.
Yeah, I mean, I think to both you and Ricky's point, when we do our post-mortem on the season, which it feels like we're kind of already in the middle of, the biggest thing
Yes.
that stuck out, and like in a lot of things, right, like elections, the losing side will always look back on like 10 things that were clear and obvious that they just entirely ignored. And for Virginia Tech in 2024, it is a stat that Chris Coleman brought to the forefront, which was that Kyron Drones had the lowest completion percentage on passes over X amount of yards, whether it was 15 or 25 or anything like that, in all of the FBS last year. He's not Peyton frickin' Manning. Like, he's a serviceable to good college quarterback when given the option to be dual threat. And if he's not, give me someone else.
Yep.
And that's not even a bag on him because he's still won some
No.
football games when healthy in that situation. But if he's not that, if we're going to pretend like he's Peyton Manning, that could be as foolish of a decision as not putting Kyron Drones in when Grant Wells was injured so bad that he missed the next 10 weeks and they kept him in for the second half against Purdue.
Time for some
ACC
picks.
picks. ACC picks. Stanford. We have Friday games. Lucky us. Right?
Yes.
Can only be so lucky. Final week of the year, we have weeknight games. Friday, 4 p.m. CBS. I know you guys will be locked into this one. Stanford, 3-8 Stanford, traveling not too far, but traveling to San Jose State. San Jose State, a 2.5-point favorite.
Guys, I don't know a damn thing about San Jose State.
They're going bowling.
Okay, I know one thing about San Jose State.
Happy to help.
I am going to pick San Jose State to cover the spread.
Okay. Andrew.
Go ACC.
Yeah.
Stanford covers.
Stanford's season is essentially over after last week, right? Mendoza goes 98 yards with his boys. They get the job done. Like Stanford's year's done.
The greatest
They might get.
game.
They might
press
get
conference of
like
the season.
they might lose by 30 in this game. I don't think they're going to show up.
There's nothing like going 98 yards with the boys, I'll tell you.
Put it on a hat.
Put it on a hat. The only thing to know about San Jose State is they have a wide receiver named Nick Nash. He's a Bolitnikoff finalist, and he is fucking filthy. He is disgusting at football. He's so good.
14 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah, almost 1,300 yards. Yeah.
Okay, I know three things about San Jose State.
He's an absolute wagon at wide receiver. Give me Stanford though. Tougher caliber competition this year. Give me Stanford. Georgia Tech is a 19-point underdog to the Dogs. They're traveling to Athens to play Georgia. All signs point to true freshman quarterback Aaron Philo playing a bulk of the snaps once again for Georgia Tech. And because of that, give me the Dogs to cover 19.
Mike, I listened to the Basketball Conference podcast yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, did Joey pick Georgia Tech to cover?
He did.
Okay, he is delusional. Joey, I hope you're listening to this. You're an absolute lunatic. There's no effing chance that Georgia Tech keeps this within 19 points. Give me Georgia. Georgia Tech is going to get run off the field.
Yeah, I mean the Dogs. Come on. One team's going to the playoff. One team came into Lane Stadium and scored 6 points on two field goals. I'll
fully
take Georgia.
I fully expect Joey to message us after he listens to this because we need to have a talk.
Aaron, look,
Our
Aaron
own fans
Philo,
aren't listening to this.
Aaron Philo has been good this year for Georgia Tech, but he hasn't played a defense like Georgia. He has not played in an environment like Athens. That's my whole thing. That's the whole thing. Noon Saturday, ESPN, number 15 South Carolina, number 12 Clemson. Clemson a 3-point favorite. Give me South Carolina outright. South Carolina outright, one of the hottest teams in college football. Clemson has not seen a defensive line like this since the Clemson game, since the Georgia game in the opener. So you're kind of bookending with two SEC teams, right? Yeah, give me South Carolina. Too hot, playing too well, running the football really well. Lenore Sellers figuring things out through the air. I worry about Clemson's banged up offensive line against one of the best defensive lines in the SEC in South Carolina. Give me the Gamecocks outright in Death Valley.
Mike, all those reasons, Carolina being hot, Clemson's banged up. Give me the Tigers. Weird shit happens in rivalry week.
That's right. Agree.
Clemson outright. College football playoff discussion continues.
Okay, I stand alone. That's fine. Louisville traveling to Lexington to take on 4-7 Kentucky. Noon on the SEC Network. Louisville a 4-point favorite. Kentucky might be starting a true freshman quarterback here. Louisville never beats Kentucky. Like they don't really do it very often. Kentucky's won 5 in a row. So no matter how good or bad Kentucky is, they seem to always beat Louisville. Give me Kentucky.
They'll do it this week. Give me Louisville.
Fair enough.
Can you put Grayson's comment on?
I got it.
Y'all boozing tonight? Empty.
Yes.
Do I? Does it, does
I
it
am-
sound
We
like
are,
we are?
I
Does
am
it
the
sound like we
only
are?
one not doing it tonight, Grayson.
Does it sound like we are? This isn't good. I don't love that. I don't love that.
He's just trolling the shit out of us.
I know.
But yeah, I'll go with Louisville on that.
All right. Well, great. I stand alone again. Duke traveling to Wake, ACC Network. Does anybody want any part of this for Wake Forest? Give me Duke. Lay 'em with the Blue Devils.
DK.
This is tough
Booze.
for me.
It's Booze Wednesday, Grayson says. Oh, yeah, baby.
Which is why we appreciate you watching our podcast live. We figure this is a driving home podcast for many. Don't turn it on for the kids.
Yeah. Boys, I'm going to go against the grain here. Give me Wake at home. Because why the hell not?
Seems like something that would happen.
Yep. I think Andrew picked.
Yeah.
Did
I
you
said
pick? Oh, okay. Okay, you said Duke. All right, sorry. All right, well, I'll cut that pause out. No, I won't. I won't do that. Why
Don't
would
work
I
too
do that?
hard, man. Come on.
I certainly won't. Thank you. It's night before Thanksgiving. I'm editing this thing and I'm going to sleep. Pittsburgh, 7-4. Pittsburgh has a chance to do the funniest thing ever and lose 5 straight games to finish the year. Traveling to Chestnut Hill to take on Boston College. Boston College, a 5.5-point favorite. This game is being played at 3:00 on the CW. CW underdogs, baby. Give me Pitt.
Is Holstein playing?
Maybe.
It's kind of important information, Mike. I need to know.
Maybe. Might be. Played 5 snaps last weekend. Maybe. Could be.
Give me Pitt. I don't feel good about it. Give me Pitt.
Here's what I'm envisioning for my day on Saturday. Because I truly do hate myself.
Jesus.
Ricky knows where my tailgate spot is, right next to Lane. Set up the little Dish Network TV. Cue up the CW. And sit in the parking lot for 5 hours before the 25-degree game. Give me Pitt.
Man. It's a choice, Andrew. It's a choice.
No, I'll be somewhere warm. Hopefully. I need to make some calls.
Champs.
Champs. Yeah, champs.
I know
Welcome
you
to
do
Showbiz.
well, Andrew.
Miami traveling to Syracuse. Miami needs to win to clinch a spot in the ACC title game. 3:30 ESPN. Syracuse, real trendy pick. No, give me Miami. I do not trust Syracuse's defense.
No.
I don't trust Syracuse's defense. Miami has Cam Ward. Syracuse has Kyle McCord, who is more than happy to throw it to the wrong team. Give me Miami here. High scoring game. Give me the Canes.
Mike, wouldn't it be hilarious?
It would be fucking outstanding. Yes, it would be very funny.
Wouldn't it be funny? Yeah, I'll take Miami.
I'm picking it just for the potential humor there. Come on. I mean, wouldn't that be so perfect?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm
It's the
absolutely
dome. The dome is
rooting for
cursed.
Syracuse. Absolutely rooting for Syracuse.
If
100%.
if they can lose at Georgia Tech, they can lose at Miami. And they almost lost at Virginia Tech, or to Virginia Tech at home. Virginia Tech is 5-6.
Yeah.
Man. Don't worry, we have more 3:30 games. Cal is traveling to number 9 SMU. SMU a 13.5-point favorite. Not going 98 yards with the boys in this game. I had 13.5 on my mind. SMU's covering 13.5. We're not going 98 yards with the boys here. Fernando Mendoza. Love you. Not doing it here. SMU.
Ponies.
Give me Cal to keep this within 2 touchdowns.
Better you than me. NC State traveling to Dead Cat Bounce, North Carolina. 3:30 ACC Network. Lame duck Mac Brown coaching his final game at Kenan Stadium.
NC State is so bad. Give me the Heels.
Honestly, like low key, the Carolina players have been like somewhat resilient for Mac this year, given how over their season's been since day one. I think against a bad team in his final game, they'll do it for him. Heels.
NC State. 7 o'clock, ESPN2. Florida traveling to Tallahassee to take on 2-9 Florida State. And I'm laughing because I previewed this game last night, and Florida State was a mere 14.5 point underdog. They are now a 16.5 point underdog to the Gators, and I still like Florida. Give me DJ Lagway and the Gators, one of the best 6-5 teams in the country. This is I'm feeling good about this. I said on my ACC pod that I felt like we were getting about 3 points of value when Florida State was catching 14.5. I felt like this should have been around 17. So 16.5 or closer to that, obviously. I still like the Gators here. Florida State's so bad.
Yeah, if the Seminoles weren't, what's the phrase, dog shit, then
that's good. Yes.
then perhaps I could pick that. No, I think Florida's going to walk away with this one pretty easily.
I feel like I've picked Florida State a lot on this podcast. It's a good thing I haven't actually done it with real money, but I won't do it again. Give me Florida.
They feel like they're rallying around Napier, don't they? It's kind of cool.
Yes.
Feels like they've played hard for him all year.
Shout out to Scott Strickland, man.
Would
Shout
love
out
to
to Scott
see
Strickland.
a similar sentiment from Virginia Tech on Saturday. Rally around the coach.
I had a rally around the coach. I had literally a story written about Napier's firing, and we had like sourcing on that at SI that like we thought Strickland was going to pull the trigger. Like we were pretty convinced he was going to pull the trigger during the bye week.
Fake news.
And he just didn't do it and sat on it.
Mike, did you write that or did the AI bot write that?
I wrote it. It's sitting in the old can, so to speak. It's still sitting there. Maybe we can refresh it around this time next year. 8 o'clock, ACC Network. We have to update some historical records for Napier and that sort of thing, but might still be relevant. I'll hold on to it. I won't delete it yet.
Skeleton might be usable.
Skeleton. It really was a skeleton. We were waiting for like final scores of the game they lost, and they didn't fire him. Virginia traveling to Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. Virginia Tech a 7-point favorite. I will take the lead here because usually I let you guys go. At least I've been doing that this year. I'll just take the lead on this one. Virginia Tech doesn't win close games. Two facts here. Virginia Tech doesn't win close games under Brent Pry. They also, over the last 20 years, they just don't lose to Virginia. Give me the Hokies by like 10 to 13 points. I think they win and cover. This is, on paper, this is it's one of those games. It's almost, this is a get right situation. I know Virginia Tech's got questions at quarterback. Tootin looked healthy to me last week. No reason to think he's not going to be able to go this week, as far as we know. He's going to be the best player on the field on Saturday, for my money. The second best player on the field is going to be APR against a bad offensive line for Virginia. Gives up a lot of sacks. I think Virginia Tech has the advantage in the trenches, which you can't say often on both sides of the football. I think they have advantage in the trenches. Because of that, I think Tech rolls here. Give me the Hokies. Let's call it like 27-13. I think they I think they score at least 3 touchdowns here, get a couple John Love field goals, and keep the cup home. I like the Hokies to win, get to a bowl game.
Yeah. If Pop hadn't played at least what I thought was somewhat decent last week against Duke, I would feel a lot worse about this pick. However, UVA is they're having a really rough go of it here the second half of the season. Virginia Tech will be a significant step down in competition for them, given who they've played over the last several weeks. With that said, Mike's absolutely right. They don't protect the passer. They don't rush the passer particularly well. They don't run the football particularly well. They've got one guy on offense that I think Virginia Tech should be able to have locked down for the most part. If Pop Watson takes care of the football, I think Virginia Tech wins this game, especially since Bashal Tutin is relatively healthy. I'm going to go 24-10 Hokies.
Team hasn't quit on Brent Pry yet. Tech has the advantage in the trenches. Bashal Tutin's the best player on the field. Slight advantage that UVA has. Good defensive backs. Probably not as big of a deal as it otherwise would be. Give me the Hokies, but it's a really, really ugly game, and we all hate ourselves, but they win by like 4. 21-17.
Oh, man, a 4-point win.
Okay, all right.
Mike would be, at this point, Mike would be
Let's fix that.
upset if Virginia Tech wins another one-score game.
I would. We can't ruin this stat for East Coast Frost. I'm leaning all the way into it. We can't ruin this for East Coast Frost, baby. Can't do it.
Oh, man.
Man, Blacksburg, cold weather is going to give another meaning to East Coast Frost, right? It's going to be very cold. I'll be here all week.
Grandpa, log off.
All right, Grandpa.
The second time I've had to tell you that today.
Get you off to bed. Virginia. All right, we all got the Hokies. That'll be good. Hopefully they go to a bowl game. We can preview another one of these later this year. Otherwise, we can have quite the recap pod. It's a win-win for content, I will say.
Yeah, pretty much.
I can only be so mad, if Virginia Tech loses to UVA. There will be some anger. I can only be so mad, though, at this point. Like, they've already lost 5 games. It's like, all right, well, if you lose a 6, you lose a 6th. I can only be so mad at this point.
To be fair, they've already lost 6 games.
7. Sorry, I'm sorry, a 7th. A 7th. I'm 7th. Sorry, a 7th. I can only be so mad at the
I'm going to counterpoint you there. Like, it doesn't matter in the bird's eye grand scheme of things, but in the immediate punch in the face sense, just like the 20-degree winds are going to hit me on Saturday, so too will, for however many people choose to brave this, if you go there and you lose to UVA, I don't know if you guys have checked the stats. We don't lose to them other than that one time when they were actually good. And that is the note that Brent Pry leaves us on. That means something in terms of the narrative. That means something in terms of what kind of person is going to choose to come to be that placeholder, let's try to fix this coordinator for the transfer portal recruit that you need to win 8 games next year and save your job. Yeah. Because if they lose to UVA, the narrative is going to be so piss poor that it is going to be, well, he might keep his job. It'll be effectively impossible to come back. So it does matter. But it still is a win-win for content.
Yeah, one of the biggest storylines from the preseason was the whole flagship program of the state that Brent Pry said at ACC kickoff. Yeah, that goes up in smoke if you lose this game. So, no pressure.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to say this doesn't have an impact on anything. This is a really important game for Brent Pry, right? This is for sure. I'd advise that he win this for him.
Well, yeah.
For his sake. I would advise that you go with
But
Go
like
ahead.
I
Go
said
ahead
at
and
the
win this game.
beginning, Mike, like if Virginia Tech wins, this is still a failure of a season. They lose, it's a failure of the season. It's just got a little extra salt in the wound.
Yeah.
No, but in my mind, it's more than that. If you win, it's still a failure of a season. If you lose, you're a lame duck. Like there's no coming back from that.
That's true.
I just think
I
the
think it's a
intangibles.
fair.
Who's willing to
Yeah.
pay money to pay players in an era where players are literally paid salaries from fans and donors? Like it's over.
Yeah.
Like it'll be impossible to convince anyone, that with this roster, you went 5-7 and lost to UVA. It's over. They might
Yeah,
as well
you're right.
fire him at that point.
You're right.
Seriously,
We
they
can
might as well because there'll be no coming back.
we
If
can rewrite.
they win, there's like a less than 50% chance that he can pull off coming back, but probably worth it to see it out given the financial constraints.
We can rewrite that. Was that the 2019 story I wrote for Suns when Tech got blown out by Pittsburgh, and I wrote the "It's Over" story? We could rerun that.
It
if you
might
guys
have been
want.
the Duke game.
Yeah, I can't remember.
That was the one I wrote in 2019 where
Yeah.
I said this is a wrap.
Yeah, I have to go back and look. Uh, not to get political, but you know what this reminds me of? When Darren Ravel, like when Trump got elected the first time, he goes, "I feel bad for our country, but this is tremendous content." That would be kind of how I felt if Pry lost this game. Like, I feel bad for our fan base, but this is tremendous content. You know what I mean?
Amen.
It would be electric on social media.
Let's
on
go.
Saturday
Let's
night.
go. Let's go win the football game.
Hey, so really quick, if Virginia Tech does lose on Saturday, there is a non-zero chance that we are doing a live show Saturday night.
There is a non-zero chance I'm in the hospital because I froze to death. But you guys go ahead.
Ricky, maybe I'll have you join the ACC pod just for the Virginia Tech segment. Yeah.
Ooh,
It'd
that
be
could,
like
that could get
phone
spicy.
a friend.
That could
Yeah, it'd
get
be like phone a friend situation. Yeah. There we go. Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
yeah.
We all got the Hokies. Enjoy the game if you're going to Blacksburg. If not, have a happy Thanksgiving. Well, have a happy Thanksgiving anyway. This game happens afterwards. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully, it doesn't culminate in a Virginia Tech loss to UVA. That would really suck. We'll be back to recap this game. Be on the lookout on social for when we're going to hit record. Probably Sunday. It'll probably be Sunday. But yeah, we'll let you know on social media when we go live. And yeah, enjoy the holiday. Until then, go Hokies.